There's something about the Arizona Territory in 1885 that drew desperate folks like moths to lamplight. The promise that a person could disappear into all that emptiness and start fresh. This here's a story about a woman who jumped from a moving stagecoach rather than face the lie waiting at the end of the road, and the quiet rancher who found her half dead in the dust. It's about the kind of courage that doesn't announce itself with speeches, but shows itself in the small choice to stop running and finally stand still. The door latch gave under Martha's thumb, cold metal. Then nothing. She hit alkali dust, hip first, shoulder second. Tasted blood. The stagecoach rolled on, driver's shout fading into the hammer of her pulse. Get up. Move. Boots sank in sand with each step. No plan except distance. The sun hung straight overhead, burning through her bonnet, turning her tongue to leather. Mesquite fence posts shimmered ahead or behind. Couldn't tell any more. Her wedding ring was gone. Man were back there in the creosote. 3 years of Silas Whitmore's voice in her head. And now just wind and her own ragged breathing. The fence post rushed up to meet her knees. Vision narrowed to a tunnel. Ground tilted. She thought, at least he won't find me here. Then nothing. If you're watching from somewhere, the desert wind still blows hot, and the sky runs on forever. Leave a word below. Sometimes knowing you're not alone in the vastness makes all the difference. The bay gelding sidestepped, nostrils wide. Caleb Shaw tightened the reins, squinting past his hat brim. Fourth fence section, mesquite posts running straight until there, slumped shape against the corner post. He dismounted slow, boots crunching alkali. Ma'am, no answer. Woman's hat in the dirt 3 feet away, neck burned raw where the sun hit. City boots, good fabric, no supplies. He kept his hands visible, approached like she might spook. Ma'am, can you hear me? Her eyelids fluttered. Martha surfaced through layers of heat, voices. Silas, no different. Rough edges, careful. She forced her eyes open. Man above her, backlit by sun, cylinder face, creased deep, work-scarred hands holding reins, not reaching for her, just standing there. Can you stand? Her throat wouldn't work, tongue swollen. The man crouched, pulled a canteen from his saddlebag, held it out. Water. Martha flinched. The canteen stopped midair. He set it down in the dirt between them. Stepped back 2 paces. Take your time. She stared at the canteen, at his hands, now empty, resting on his knees, at his face weathered, patient. Waiting, her fingers closed around the tin. Lukewarm water hit her tongue. She drank, gagged, while water spilling down her chin. Drank again, slower. That's it, the man said. Not too fast. She lowered the canteen. Her voice came out cracked. Where? Clear Creek Ranch, my land. Name's Caleb Shaw. Martha nodded. Tried to stand. Legs buckled. Easy. He didn't move toward her. I can bring the horse closer. She managed to get upright. Hand braced on the fence post. Caleb led the bay gelding forward. Held the reins steady. Didn't offer to help her mount. Just positioned the horse. Waited. Martha gripped the saddle horn. Got her boot in the stirrup. Pulled herself up. The world tilted, but she stayed on. Caleb walked ahead, leading the horse at a slow pace. The rhythm of hoofbeats, the sun hammering down. Martha swayed, fingers wrapped tight in the mare's mane. Adobe house appeared through the heat shimmer. Deep porch, garden fence, solid walls. Caleb stopped at the porch rail, looped the reins, turned back to her. "I'll hold her steady. You come down when you're ready." Martha's hands tightened on the saddle. Every instinct screamed not to dismount, not to be within reach, but her body couldn't stay upright much longer. She swung her leg over, started to slide down. Caleb's hands came up reflexive. Martha went rigid. He froze, palms open, 2 feet from her waist, not touching, just there. His eyes met hers, something unreadable passing through them. "I won't," he said quietly. And that's when Martha saw it, the tan line on his left hand where a wedding ring used to be. Martha slid down from the saddle, boots hitting packed dirt. Caleb's hands dropped to his sides. He stepped back, turned toward the house without waiting for her to follow. The spare room smelled like lye soap and dust. Iron bedstead, star quilt in blue and white, washstand in the corner pitcher, bowl, sliver of yellow soap worn thin at the edges, window faced east, muslin curtain moving in the breeze. Martha stood in the doorway. Her carpet bag hung from her shoulder, leather strap cutting into collarbone. She set it on the bed. The buckle clicked open. Dusty muslin dress came off first. She folded it, hands moving automatic. Underneath the nightgown she'd packed without thinking. White cotton, laundered so many times the fabric had gone soft. She stared at it. Planned this, deeper than she knew. Her fingers shook as she lifted the nightgown free. Set it on the quilt. The pitcher held lukewarm water. She poured it into the bowl, dipped her hands. Alkali grit dissolved. Turning the water gray, she cupped handfuls, splashed her face. Water ran down her neck, soaking the collar of her chemise. The mirror above the washstand showed stranger, sun-blistered nose, cracked lips, hair coming loose from pins, eyes too wide. Martha looked away. Outside, bootsteps crossed the yard. Caleb's voice, low, talking to someone. No checking the chickens. Hinges creaked. Door latch. His steps retreated toward the house. She dried her face on the towel hanging from the washstand hook. Rough cotton, frayed edges, changed into the nightgown. Her corset stayed on, couldn't reach the back hooks herself, and she wouldn't ask. The kitchen sounds filtered through cast iron, sliding across the stove. Water poured from a pump, the thunk of a Dutch oven lid. Martha sat on the bed edge. Didn't lie down. Not yet. "Supper's on," Caleb called from the other room. Not loud, just stating fact. Her stomach clenched. When had she last eaten? The stagecoach stopped yesterday. Hardtack and jerky she couldn't swallow. She stood, smoothed the nightgown, walked barefoot to the kitchen doorway. Caleb stood at the stove, back to her. Beans in a pot, cornbread in the Dutch oven, 2 tin plates on the table, 2 cups, fork and knife at each place. He glanced over his shoulder, nodded once, turned back to the stove. Martha moved to the table, pulled out the chair farthest from him. Wood scraped across floorboards. Caleb ladled beans onto both plates, cut the cornbread into squares, set 2 on each plate, poured coffee from an enamel pot dark, strong-smelling, set 1 cup in front of her, sat across from her, picked up his fork. Martha stared at the coffee. Steam rising. Silas never allowed it. Stimulants unbecoming. Tea only. Weak and lukewarm. His rules, his house, his voice in her head even now. Her hand closed around the cup. Tin hot against her palm. She lifted it. Caleb's fork paused halfway to his mouth. Martha brought the cup to her lips. Bitter liquid, strong enough to make her throat close. She swallowed. Met Caleb's eyes across the table. He nodded once, returned to his plate. The beans were simple. Salt pork, molasses, cornbread dents, honey butter melting into the crust. Martha ate slowly, her stomach uncertain, clenching around each bite. Caleb finished half his plate, set his fork down. Town's 8 miles. Go Saturdays for supplies. Martha kept chewing. You want distance from town, Caleb said. Understand that. She swallowed, reached for the coffee, drank. Spare room's yours, he continued. Long as you need. The words hung there. No conditions, no questions about where she came from or why. Just yours. Martha set the cup down. Her hand still shook. The ledgers, Caleb said, nodding toward the stack of account books on the side table. Previous foreman couldn't work percentages. Made a mess of things. He paused, looked at her directly. You know numbers. Her throat tightened. Some? Well, Caleb picked up his fork again. There's that. Then they ate in silence. Outside. Cicadas started their evening song. The coal oil lamp flickered, casting shadows across the rough-hewn table. Martha finished what she could. Set her fork down. The question rose in her throat before she could stop it. Why? She swallowed. Tried again. Why are you helping me? Caleb pushed his plate aside, looked at her across the table, his face unreadable in the lamplight. Plenty folks running from something out here, he said finally. Most got reason. He stood, carried his plate to the wash basin, didn't wait for her to answer. Martha sat alone at the table, coffee cooling in her cup, and realized he hadn't asked what she was running from, which meant he already knew. Dawn light came through the muslin curtain. Martha woke to the sound of Caleb's boots on the porch, the pump handle squeaking, water splashing into the trough. She dressed in the muslin, brushed clean the night before, pinned her hair. Her fingers knew the movements without thought. Years of Silas's inspections had trained them. She caught herself, irritated at the instinct. The kitchen stood empty, coffee still warm in the pot. She poured a cup, drank it standing. Through the window, Caleb at the corral, forking hay to 2 horses. The grain bucket sat by the back door, galvanized tin, dented on one side. Martha picked it up, walked out. Caleb glanced over, nodded, went back to his work. The chicken coop wire gleamed in early sun. Martha unlatched the door. A dozen Rhode Island Reds strutted toward her, clucking low in their throats. She scattered grain in wide arcs. The birds swarmed, pecking at dirt. 6 eggs in the nesting boxes, brown, still warm. She gathered them in her apron, careful not to crack the shells. One hen limped near the water trough, favoring her left leg. Martha carried the eggs to the kitchen, set them in a bowl, went back out. Caleb was closing the corral gate. Something wrong? One of the hens, limping. He followed her to the coop, watched the bird. Bumblefoot. Probably. I'll check her tonight. Martha nodded. Need to show you something, Caleb said. He led her around the house to a wooden door set into the ground at an angle. Root cellar. He pulled it open, hinges protesting. Ladder descended into darkness. Got a lamp? He fetched one from the kitchen, struck a match, touched it to the wick, handed it to her. Martha climbed down. Cool air rose from below. Earthen walls, wooden shelves, potatoes in burlap sacks, onions hanging in braids, mason jars lined up tomatoes, beans, peaches, enough to last through a hard winter. "Use what you need," Caleb called from above. She climbed back up. He closed the door, dusted his hands. "I'll be riding the north fence. Back by noon." He left without waiting for an answer. Martha washed the breakfast dishes, dried them, stacked them on the shelf. The house ticked in the heat, quiet, but not suffocating, not like Silas's house, where silence meant danger. The ledgers sat on the side table, 3 of them, leather covers cracked. She carried them to the kitchen table, opened the first one. Dates ran down the left margin. Caleb's handwriting neat enough, letters formed careful. But the columns didn't balance. Simple arithmetic errors, numbers transposed. She found a steel nib pen in a wooden holder, glass bottle of India ink beside it. She started with January, traced each entry, recalculated, found the mistakes, crossed them out lightly, wrote corrections in the margin. The system took her 2 days to understand fully Caleb's shorthand, his way of marking cattle by brand rather than count. But the patterns emerged. Revenue from cattle sales, expenses for feed, lumber, salt blocks, property taxes paid quarterly. By the time Caleb returned, she'd finished 3 months. He poured himself coffee, glanced at the open ledger, said nothing, just pulled out a chair and sat across from her. Martha kept working. Her pen scratched across paper. She blotted the corrections with pink blotting paper, letting the ink dry before turning the page. "Previous foreman," she said without looking up. "What happened to him? Disagreement." She waited. "He wanted to run things his way," Caleb said. "Wasn't my way." Martha nodded, turned another page. The afternoon wore on. Caleb left to check the horses, came back with a chunk of mesquite wood and a knife. Sat on the porch, started carving. The blade whispered against hard grain. Martha worked through June, found something in the cattle sale receipts. She stopped, read the entry again. Caleb had sold 50 head to a buyer in Tucson. The receipt showed payment of $8 per head, but the ledger entry showed only $6 per head recorded as income. $2 per head, $100 total missing. She flipped back through previous months, found the pattern, every cattle sale, same thing, money coming in, less money recorded, not theft, the opposite. She cross-referenced with the property tax records tucked in the back of the ledger. Found a name, Eleanor Morrison, widow, ranch adjacent to Clear Creek on the eastern boundary. Behind that correspondence, Mrs. Morrison couldn't make her mortgage payments, bank threatening foreclosure. And there, in Caleb's handwriting, private loan agreement, $100, no interest, repayable when able. Martha sat back. The numbers told the story plain. Caleb wasn't just helping, he was absorbing the loss himself, underpaying his own accounts to keep a neighbor's ranch afloat. She looked through the open door. Caleb on the porch, mesquite shavings curling away from his knife, weathered hands working the wood into a spoon handle. He wasn't a ranch hand. The property deed in the back of the ledger showed clear Caleb Shaw, owner of 2,000 acres, free and clear, no mortgage, no liens, and he was giving it away in pieces to keep others from drowning. Martha pulled the ledger closer, reorganized the entries chronologically, created a separate column for charitable disbursements, balanced the books properly. The real numbers showed Caleb barely breaking even most months. The sun angled lower. Caleb came inside, set the half-carved spoon on the counter, Started supper. Beans from the root cellar, salt pork from the larder. They ate in silence. Martha washed the dishes. Caleb dried them, put them away. Ledgers make more sense now, he asked. Yes. Good. He hung the towel on its hook, went back to the porch. Martha followed, sat in the other chair. The evening stretched out before them, cicadas singing, heat finally breaking. Caleb carved. She watched his hands, capable, scarred across the knuckles from years of work. The quiet settled between them. Not tense, not waiting for the other person to speak. Just quiet. Martha felt something shift in her chest, a loosening, like she could breathe deeper here. First time in years, she looked at Caleb's profile in the dying light. Wanted to say something. Thank him. Maybe tell him she understood what the numbers meant. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, she said, "The hen? Did you check her? Bumblefoot. Like I thought. Cleaned it. Wrapped it. She'll mend." Martha nodded. The stars came out one by one. Caleb set his knife aside, brushed the wood shavings from his lap. "Your accent," he said. "Boston." Her throat tightened. "Yes?" He nodded. "Didn't ask, Ma." "Left a bad situation," Martha said. The words came easier than she expected. "Plenty folks do." Silence again. Comfortable. Then Caleb stood. "Early morning tomorrow. Riding to check the stock tank." He went inside. The lamp in his room flickered on, then off. Tata sat alone on the porch. The ledgers were inside. Balanced now, telling the truth about who Caleb Shaw really was. And she realized he'd given her access to everything. His accounts, his property records, his private correspondence. Either he trusted her completely, or he'd known exactly who she was the moment he found her in the desert. Saturday morning, Caleb hitched the buckboard wagon, checking the traces twice. Martha stood on the porch, watching his hands work the leather straps. "Need supplies in town," he said without looking up. "You want to stay here, that's fine. Understand if you'd rather keep distance." Martha's fingers twisted in her apron. Town meant people, questions, eyes on her. But staying meant hiding. I'd been hiding for 3 years. "I'll come." Caleb nodded, finished with the harness, climbed onto the spring seat, gathered the reins. Martha pulled herself up beside him. The wagon lurched forward. 8 miles of dirt road. Sun already hot at 9 in the morning. Martha's hands gripped the seat edge. Her spine held rigid, waiting for something to go wrong. Caleb drove steady. Didn't try to fill the silence with talk. Before they'd left, Martha had stood at the washstand mirror, braiding her hair, the movement's automatic 3 sections, over and under, pin at the nape. Silas had required it neat. Always neat. She'd caught herself smoothing non-existent flyaways, checking the angle twice, irritated at the habit, at the fact that his voice still directed her hands. Dos Cruces appeared through the heat shimmer. 1 street. Adobe building squatting in the dust. False front general store, livery stable, saloon with batwing doors propped open, wooden sidewalk running along the storefronts. Caleb pulled the wagon up to the general store hitching rail, set the brake. "Won't be long." Martha climbed down. Her boots hit the wooden sidewalk. 3 men stood outside the saloon, talking low. They glanced over, looked away. The general store door stood open. Caleb went in first. Martha followed, staying close enough that her shoulder almost brushed his arm. Cool air inside. Shelves lined with canned goods. fabric bolts, hardware, smell of coffee beans and leather and tobacco. Behind the counter, woman, maybe 50, gray hair pulled back in a bun. Sharp eyes that took in everything. Caleb. The woman's voice carried authority. Been a while. Mrs. Kemp. Caleb touched his hat brim. Need some things. I expect you do. Adelaide Kemp's gaze shifted to Martha. Held there. No judgment in her face, just assessment. Martha met her eyes, didn't look away. Mrs. Kemp nodded slightly, turned to Caleb. What'll it be? Ledger paper. 2 reams, coffee, salt pork if you've got any. While Mrs. Kemp gathered supplies, Martha moved toward the fabric display. Bolts of calico stacked on a table. Her fingers traced the pale blue pattern, 5 cents a yard. The sign said, Need fabric, Caleb asked from behind her. Martha stopped. She had no money, everything spent on the stagecoach ticket. Get what you need, Caleb said. Put it on my account. Mrs. Kemp cut 3 yards without asking. Added needles in a paper packet. Set them on the counter. A younger woman emerged from the back room, Mrs. Kemp's clerk. Mexican, maybe 20. She spoke rapid Spanish to Mrs. Kemp, who answered in English. Tell him Tuesday delivery, no earlier. Martha's shoulders loosened slightly. Language mixing easy here. Different from Boston, where every word was watched, corrected, judged. Caleb ordered lumber. Need to fix the chicken coop. 30 board feet of pine. Have it ready next Saturday, Mrs. Kemp said, writing in her order book. Male voices drifted from outside. Shaw's place. Price on cattle's holding steady. Might get $8 a head if you drive to Tucson yourself. Shaw always gets fair price. Man knows his business. The voices moved away. Mrs. Kemp wrapped the fabric in brown paper, tied it with twine, set everything in a wooden crate. That'll be $7.40. And Caleb, she paused. Good to see you bringing help to the ranch. Place has been too quiet. Caleb counted coins onto the counter. Ledger papers for the bookkeeper. Mrs. Kemp swept the coins into her cash drawer. Her eyes flicked to Martha. Ma'am? Martha managed a nod. Martha turned toward the door. Her gaze snagged on the wall beside it. Wanted posters. 4 of them, tacked up side by side. The format a lone bold type, legal language. Reward printed across the top sent ice through her veins. She couldn't read the names from here. Didn't matter. The words whereas and fugitive and lawful custody blurred together. Her breath caught. Vision tunneled. Caleb moved past her, casual, examining the saddle soap display mounted on the wall directly between her and the posters. His body blocked her view. He picked up a tin, turned it over, read the label slowly. This the same brand as last time? He asked Mrs. Kemp. Same one. He set it back down, moved toward the door. Martha followed, legs uncertain. Outside, the sun hit like a fist. Caleb loaded the crate into the wagon bed. Martha climbed back onto the seat. Her hands shook. She pressed them flat against her thighs. The wagon rolled back down the main street, past the saloon, the livery, the telegraph office where the posters hung, when they cleared the edge of town. Caleb spoke. Those posters been up 2 months. Train robbery, mining claim dispute. Nothing to do with you. She looked at him. How do you... Telegraph office posts them when they come through. Been the same 4 since May. Martha turned forward again, stared at the horse's ears, the road unwinding ahead. They rode in silence for a mile, 2 miles. The town disappeared behind them. Martha's breathing gradually slowed. The shaking in her hands eased. "I was supposed to marry a man," she said. The words came without planning. "Ezra Brennan. I didn't—" Caleb's hand stayed loose on the reins. "His loss. Simple. Not probing. No demand for explanation. I used the arrangement to—" Martha stopped, tried again. "To get away. From Boston?" "Yes." "The in bad situation?" "Yes." The wagon rocked over a rut. "Has." Caleb corrected the horse's line without effort. "Ezra's place is north of here," he said. "About 20 miles. You won't run into him in town." Martha's throat closed. "You knew?" "Figured." Caleb's eyes stayed on the road. "Man puts out word he's expecting a mail-order bride from Boston. Bride doesn't show up. Same day. I find a woman from Boston half dead in my fence line." He shrugged. "Didn't take much to piece together. And you still—" "You got reasons for running. Not my business to ask." He glanced at her briefly. "Just need to know one thing. You safe now, legally?" Martha's fingers twisted together. "I filed separation papers 'fore I left. But Silas, my husband, he has lawyers, money, connections." "Silas who?" "Whitmore. Silas Whitmore. He's a banker in Boston." Caleb absorbed this. Nodded once. "All right. That's all just all right. You're here. He's there. That's what matters right now." The ranch came into view, adobe walls solid in the afternoon light. Martha looked at Caleb's profile, weathered, quiet, impossible to read. "Why did you help me?" The question escaped before she could stop it. Caleb guided the horses through the gate, set the brake, sat there with the reins in his hands. "Because you needed help," he said finally. "That's reason enough." He climbed down, started unloading the supplies. Martha sat on the wagon seat. The sun beat down. Chickens clucked in their coop. Everything peaceful, ordinary. But Caleb had said, "right now," which meant he knew Silas wouldn't stay in Boston forever. 2 months. Martha's hands no longer shook when she scattered grain for the chickens. The hens knew her now, rushed to meet her at the coop door. She'd memorized their patterns, which nested in the back corner, which pecked at the others, which laid double-yolked eggs. This morning she found fox tracks pressed into the dirt near the wire mesh, paw prints circling the coop, testing for weakness. She showed Caleb after breakfast. He crouched, traced the outline with his finger. "I'll reinforce the bottom boards tonight." Martha nodded, carried the eggs inside. The ledgers had become hers. She'd reorganized all 6 months, created new columns, balanced everything to the penny. Now Caleb brought the account books to her first, before making any decisions. The pale blue curtain she'd sewn hung in the spare room window. The fabric had taken her 3 evenings, stitching by lamplight while Caleb carved on the porch. He'd hung them without comment, just fetched the step stool and positioned them exactly where she pointed. Afternoons, weather permitting, Caleb took her out on Rosie. The old mare moved patient and steady while Martha learned to sit the saddle properly, to read the animal's ears, to guide with knees and reins together. Her thighs had stopped aching after the first month. Now she could ride 2 hours without needing to dismount. This afternoon they sat across from each other at the kitchen table, Caleb working through a supply order, Martha checking his arithmetic. "This number here," she said, pointing. "You've got 47 times. That's 282, not 272. Caleb leaned closer to see, His shoulder nearly touched hers. How'd you calculate that so fast? Break it into pieces. 40 times 6 is 240. 7 times 6 is 42. Add them. He nodded slowly. Wrote the correction, their heads bent over the ledger together. Close enough that Martha could smell the sun and dust on his shirt. The proximity didn't make her flinch anymore. Property boundaries, Caleb said, flipping to a surveyor's map tucked in the back. This line here runs north to the Morrison place. This one east to the Territorial Road. Water rights documented here. He pulled out another paper. Creek runs year-round. Can't be diverted without legal approval. Martha studied the documents. Why are you showing me this? So you know. Caleb's finger traced the boundary lines. Clear Creek Ranch, 2,000 acres, free and clear, no mortgage, no liens. Lawyer in Tucson verified everything when I bought it back. Bought it back. My father's land, lost it to speculators when I was 18. Took me 20 years to get it back. Martha looked at him. Lines carved deep around his eyes, scarred knuckles. 20 years of work written on his body. It's secure now, Caleb said. That's what matters. The sound of a wagon came from the road. Both of them looked up, but it passed without stopping. Saturday came again. Caleb rode to town alone this time. Martha stayed, working on a second set of curtains for the kitchen. The fabric slid smooth under her fingers. She'd forgotten the simple satisfaction of making something useful. The wagon returned at dusk. Caleb's footsteps crossed the porch slower than usual. Martha set down her sewing. Did you get... His face stopped her. Jaw tight, eyes careful. What happened? Caleb removed his hat, set it on the table, poured himself coffee from the pot, even though it had gone cold hours ago. Man in town, he said finally. Asking questions at the general store. The room tilted. Martha's hands gripped the chair back. Looking for a woman. Boston accent. Said she was his wife. The coffee cup slipped from Martha's fingers, shattered on the floor. Brown liquid spread across the boards. Ceramic shards scattered. Neither of them moved. He described you, Caleb said. His voice stayed level. Height, age, dark hair. Said you'd run off confused. Needed to bring you home. Martha's breath came in short gasps, vision spotting at the edges. Mrs. Kemp told him she hadn't seen anyone like that. Caleb set his cup down. But he's staying at the boarding house, 3 blocks from the general store. The floor wouldn't hold still. Martha's knees unlocked. She sat hard in the chair. Caleb moved not toward her, just pulling a chair closer. Sat down. Waited. He found me. Martha's voice came from far away. How did he? Telegraph network. Inquiries to sheriffs, postmasters. Man with money can cover a lot of ground without leaving Boston. I filed the papers. Legal separation. I thought, papers take time. Territory courts move slow. Caleb's hands rested on his knees. What does he want? My mother died 2 years ago. Left me her inheritance. House in Salem. Stocks. Bank accounts. Martha's words tumbled faster. Silas married me to control it. But Mother's will specified it goes to me alone. He can't touch it unless I'm his wife. Unless he can prove I'm... She stopped. Swallowed. Unfit. Unfit how? Mentally incompetent. A danger to myself. Any reason that would let him have me declared. Her throat closed. Silence. Just the clock ticking on the mantel. How much, Caleb asked. The inheritance. Yes. $43,000. Caleb absorbed this, nodded once. That's worth coming after. Martha's hands twisted together. He'll use courts, lawyers. He knows territorial law. He's been researching land deals out here for his bank. He'll find a way to what? To take me back. Or take everything I have. Her voice broke. And I can't fight him. I don't have money for lawyers. I don't have... You have me. The words hung between them. Martha looked up. Caleb's face showed no emotion, just that same weathered steadiness. Why would you risk that? She asked. He could come after your land. Use legal tricks to let him try. Caleb's voice stayed quiet. This land's protected. Water rights documented. Surveys filed. Title registered with the territorial government. Been through every possible legal challenge when I bought it back. He's got no leverage there. You don't understand. Silas is... I understand fine. Caleb leaned forward slightly. Man uses law as a weapon. Uses money to hurt people. I've seen that before. Then you know I can't win. Not alone, maybe. Martha stared at him. What are you saying? Saying I've got resources. And I know people. Lawyer in Tucson who handled my property restoration. He's territorial judge now. Got connections to the governor's office. That's not enough. Silas has been here 3 hours and already the whole town knows he's asking questions. That's how small territories work. News travels. Caleb's eyes held hers. And I've got something he doesn't. What? Time? He's visiting. I live here. A log shifted in the stove. Sparks drifted up the chimney. Martha's breath gradually slowed. The shaking in her hands eased slightly. He'll use the courts, she said again, quieter this time. Then we'll meet him there. Caleb stood, picked up the broken pieces of her coffee cup, dropped them in the scrap bucket, wiped the floor with a rag. But first, I need to know something. Martha waited. You legally free of him. The papers you filed, they legitimate. Yes, filed with the Massachusetts court before I left. Witnessed and notarized. Good. That's a start. He hung the rag on its hook, turned back to her. And this Ezra business. That relevant to what Silas might claim. Martha's stomach dropped. How did you... I know people, Caleb said simply. Territory's small. Word gets around when a mail-order bride doesn't show up. He paused. Does Silas know about that? I don't think so. I used a different name on the application. Mary Brennan. Caleb absorbed this. Good. Keep it that way. He moved toward the door, stopped, looked back. One more thing. Why'd you really jump off that stagecoach? Martha's throat tightened. I couldn't do it. Couldn't lie to Ezra's face. Seen him like that? And I thought... She stopped. I thought if I just disappeared, maybe Silas would give up looking. Yes. Men like that don't give up. Caleb's hand rested on the door frame. They doubled down. The truth of it settled in Martha's chest like a stone. So what do I do? She whispered. Caleb's eyes held hers across the dim kitchen. You stop running, he said. And you fight back. He went outside. Martha heard him checking the chicken coop, hammering boards into place against the fox. She sat alone in the gathering dark and realized Caleb hadn't asked if she wanted to fight. He'd already decided they would. Martha couldn't close her eyes. Every time she tried, She saw Silas's face, the way his jaw tightened when he was angry, the precise way he adjusted his cufflinks before delivering a reprimand. She left the bed, pulled her wrapper over her nightgown. The house creaked in the darkness. The kitchen lamp sat on the table, unlit. She didn't light it, just sat in the chair, staring at nothing. Her carpet bag rested against the wall. She pulled it close, found the false bottom where she'd sewn her mother's jewelry into the lining, felt the shapes through fabric, a brooch, 2 rings, a cameo pendant. She had sold most of it in Boston to pay for the stagecoach ticket. These pieces she'd kept, not for sentiment. For this, she worked the stitches loose with her fingernail. The jewelry fell into her palm. Not much. Maybe worth $40 if she could find a buyer who didn't ask questions. San Francisco. Maybe Oregon. Far enough this time. No, nowhere was far enough. Silas had found her here. He'd find her anywhere. The floorboards creaked behind her. Knew you'd be up. Martha's shoulders hunched. Heat flooded her face, caught here like a thief, counting her escape money in the dark. Pathetic. A coward planning to run again because she was too weak to stand and fight. Caleb moved past her to the stove, struck a match, lit the lamp. Yellow light pushed back the shadows, exposed her sitting there with the jewelry clutched in her fist like some desperate animal hoarding scraps. He filled the coffee pot from the pump, set it on the stove, added wood to the firebox, did everything slow, methodical, not looking at her. My father lost this land when I was 18, he said. Speculators from back east used legal tricks, foreclosed on him for taxes he'd already paid. Court sided with them anyway. The coffee started to heat. Caleb stared at the pot. He died 6 months later. Just gave up. Couldn't live with losing everything he'd built. Martha's throat closed. The jewelry bit into her palm. Took me 20 years to earn enough to buy it back. Every cent I made went into that fund. Lived in line shacks, ate beans and hardtack. Didn't own more than 2 shirts. Caleb poured coffee into 2 cups, set one in front of her. Finally got enough. Lawyer helped me navigate the territorial claims. Same man who's judge now. He sat across from her, wrapped his hands around his cup. Point is, he said, you can keep moving, but you'll still be running, and he'll still be coming. Martha stared at the jewelry in her palm. $40. Worthless. All of it worthless. She couldn't even run properly, just scramble from one hole to another like a rabbit with a fox on its trail. I'm tired. Her voice cracked. I know. I can't. The word star. I can't keep doing this, but I can't fight him either. I'm not strong enough. I'm not brave. I'm just nothing. The word she couldn't say. She was nothing. A woman who'd run away in the night, who'd lied to a decent man to use him for an escape route, who jumped off a stagecoach into the desert because dying alone seemed easier than facing one more day of her own cowardice. The tears came without warning. Silent, hot, shameful. She tried to wipe them away, but more came. Her shoulders shook. She bent forward, pressing her free hand against her mouth to stop the sounds. Caleb didn't move, didn't reach across the table, just sat there while she broke apart. When she could breathe again, she looked up. His eyes hadn't left her face. I lied to you, Martha whispered, the confession scraped out. About everything. I used Ezra, answered his advertisement with a false name, Mary Brennan. let him pay for my ticket. Never intended to marry him. Just needed a way out. She swallowed. I'm a liar and a user, and I hurt people to save myself. I know. Martha's head snapped up. Territory's small. Caleb said, word travels. I knew before you told me. The shame crashed over her again. Worse this time. He'd known from the beginning. Known she was worthless, and still he'd let her stay. Given her work, treated her with respect she didn't deserve. Why? The word came out raw. Why would you? You did what you had to survive. That doesn't make it right. No. But it makes you human. Caleb leaned forward. You think I judge you for that, after what he put you through? Martha looked down at the jewelry still clutched in her fist. $40. Running money that wouldn't get her 50 miles. She was pathetic. A coward who couldn't even run effectively, who had to hide behind a man she barely knew because she couldn't face her own battles. I'm sorry, Aunt, she whispered. I'm so sorry. Caleb stood, out into his room, came back with an iron strongbox, set it on the table, unlocked it with a key from his belt. Inside documents, legal papers. He pulled out a folder, opened it. Had a friend send some telegraphs. Man I know works at the Boston courthouse. Caleb spread papers across the table. Your husband's been busy. Martha's hands shook as she reached for the first document. Bank foreclosure records. Names she didn't recognize. All women. All widows or separated wives, all claiming Silas Whitmore had manipulated them out of property or inheritance. 3 cases in the past 5 years. He's done this before, Caleb said quietly. Martha read through the papers. Her stomach turned. The pattern was identical every time Silas befriended vulnerable women, offered financial help, then used legal manipulation to take everything. One woman, Catherine Holmes, declared mentally incompetent. Her entire estate seized. Another, Eleanor Graves, found dead, ruled suicide. Estate went to creditors, Silas's bank. The third, still fighting in court, penniless. You're not the first, Caleb said. And you won't be the last, unless someone stops him. Martha set the papers down. Her hands had stopped shaking. Something else moved through her chest now, something sharper than shame. I can't stop him, she said. But the words came out different this time. Not defeated, testing. Not alone, Caleb's voice had stayed quiet. Together, different odds. Why would you do this? Risk everything because it's right. He paused, looked at her directly. And because you matter. The words settled between them like stones dropped in still water. Martha looked at the documents, at the jewelry in her palm, at Caleb's weathered face across the table. I'm afraid, she said. The truth. I know. But you're here anyway. That's what counts. Outside, a coyote called. Another answered. The sound echoed across the empty land. Martha closed her fist around the jewelry one more time, felt the sharp edges press into her palm. Then she opened her hand, set the pieces on the table. I'll stay, she said, her voice barely audible. I'll fight. Caleb nodded once, started gathering the documents back into the strongbox. First thing we ride to Tucson, get ahead of this legally. My friend Fletcher, the judge. He'll know how to handle it proper. And if Silas finds out about Ezra, about me using a false name, then we deal with that too. Caleb looked at her. But we do it together. Martha sat in the lamplight. The kitchen window showed nothing but darkness outside, but for the first time in 3 years. The darkness didn't feel like it was closing in. It felt like space, room to stand, room to be. And she realized Caleb hadn't just offered to help her. He'd already been gathering evidence for weeks. 3 days on horseback to Tucson. Martha rode Rosie, the old mare steady beneath her, Caleb on the bay gelding alongside. The first day her thighs ached by noon. By evening, the inside of her legs felt raw where the saddle rubbed through her skirt. They stopped at a way station as the sun set. Adobe building. 1 room, 6 bunks. The proprietor, a Mexican man with gray mustache, charged 50 cents each for the bunks and water for the horses. Martha paid from the small purse Caleb had given her that morning. "Your inheritance money," he'd said. "Might as well use it for this." She bought grain for Rosie while Caleb saw to his gelding. Her legs trembled when she dismounted. The blisters had started, she could feel them forming, hot spots on her inner thighs. That night she lay in the bunk, every muscle screaming, didn't complain, just waited for dawn. The second day was worse. The blisters open. Each step of the horse sent fire through her legs. Sweat soaked through her chemise, her dress, made the raw skin burn worse. She gritted her teeth, kept riding. At the second way station, a woman saw her limping, brought a tin of salve. For the saddle sores, Martha took it into the privy, applied it with shaking hands. The relief was temporary. The third day, her body found a rhythm born of pure stubbornness. Pain became something separate, a thing she carried but didn't let direct her. She focused on Rosie's ears, the horizon, Caleb's steady presence 10 feet ahead. Tucson appeared on the third afternoon, adobe buildings spreading across the valley. Church spire rising against blue sky, bigger than Dos Cruces. Real streets, multiple saloons, a courthouse. Caleb led them to a boarding house on the east side, 2-story building, whitewashed. Sign out front, Mrs. Oliveira's Respectable Lodgings. The proprietress met them at the door. Older Mexican woman, black dress, silver crucifix at her throat. Her eyes assessed Martha, then Caleb. 2 rooms, Caleb said. Mrs. Oliveira nodded. Separate floors, propriety observed. She showed Martha upstairs. Breakfast at 7. No gentlemen callers. Martha's room held an iron bed, washstand, chair, clean but plain. She washed the trail dust from her face and hands, changed into the muslin dress she'd brushed that morning. Her legs still burned, but the salve helped. Knock at the door. "Ready," Caleb's voice through the wood. "Yes?" The attorney's office sat 2 blocks from the courthouse. Adobe building, territorial seal beside the door, bronze plaque, Hiram Fletcher, escrow, territorial law, inside desk, filing cabinets, law books lining the walls. Behind the desk, man in his 50s, gray beard trimmed neat, wire spectacles. He stood when they entered. Caleb Shaw. Fletcher's handshake was firm. "Been a while. Mr. Fletcher, this is Martha Whitmore." Fletcher's eyes shifted to her. "Mrs. Whitmore, please, sit." Martha took the chair across from his desk. Her hands twisted in her lap. She forced them still. Fletcher pulled a file from his drawer. "I've reviewed the documents Mr. Shaw sent by telegraph. Quite a situation you have here. Can you help me?" Martha's voice came out steadier than she felt. "I believe so. You have the original papers with you. Martha opened her carpet bag, pulled out the folder she'd carried for 3 days. Separation papers. Filed with Massachusetts court, witnessed, notarized. Her mother's will inheritance specified to Martha alone, not marital property. And the bank records Caleb had obtained 3 other women. Same pattern of manipulation and theft. Fletcher spread them across his desk, read carefully, made notes on a legal pad. Your case is strong, he said finally. Territorial law recognizes Massachusetts legal proceedings. Your separation filing is valid. Your mother's will explicitly protects the inheritance from marital claims. He tapped the bank records. And these establish pattern of behavior. Criminal fraud, potentially. But Silas has lawyers, Martha said. Money. Connections back east. So do I. Fletcher's eyes held hers. I sit as territorial judge twice monthly. I have the governor's ear, and I don't take kindly to Eastern bankers using our courts to steal from women. He stood. Mr. Whitmore is staying at the Grand Hotel. I sent word this morning that his presence is requested here at 3 o'clock. Legal matter requiring his attention. Martha's stomach clenched. He's coming here. Better that than him controlling the location. Fletcher's voice gentled slightly. Mrs. Whitmore, you need to face him. On record, with witnesses. That's how we end this. The clock on the wall showed 2:30. Martha's hands started shaking. She pressed them flat against her thighs. The pressure on her saddle sores made her wince, but she welcomed the pain. Something to focus on besides the fear. I'll be right here, Caleb said from the chair beside her. First words he'd spoken since they entered. At 2:55, footsteps sounded on the wooden sidewalk outside. The door opened. Silas Whitmore stepped into the office. Tailored frock coat, dark wool, white shirt, silk cravat, hair pomaded back, Cologne Bay rum. Expensive. The scent hit Martha like a fist. 3 years of that smell. That voice. Those hands directing every movement of her life. His eyes found her, widened slightly. Then his face smoothed into practiced concern. Martha. His voice honey-warm. Thank heaven. I've been so worried. Mr. Whitmore. Fletcher stood behind his desk. Please sit. Silas's attention shifted to the attorney, assessed him, then to Caleb, back to Martha. I'm not sure what's happening here, Silas said, but my wife is clearly your separated wife. Fletcher interrupted. Legal papers filed 4 months ago in Massachusetts, documented here. He tapped the folder. Silas's jaw tightened. Just slightly. Martha saw it the first crack in his composure. Those papers were filed without my knowledge or consent. Martha was not in her right mind. I was perfectly aware of what I was doing. Martha's voice cut through his, surprised herself. The words had come without planning. Silas turned to her, softened his expression, leaned forward in his chair. The movement calculated, designed to seem intimate. Darling, you've been confused. This rancher has taken advantage of your vulnerable state. Sit back, Mr. Whitmore. Fletcher's voice held steel now. Silas obeyed, but his eyes stayed on Martha, calculating. She knew that look. He was adjusting strategy, finding new angles. Let's be clear, Fletcher said. Your separated wife, has filed for legal dissolution of marriage. She has documentation of inheritance from her mother. specified as individual property, not marital. She has witnesses to your pattern of financial manipulation. He spread the bank records across his desk. 3 other women, same methods, all documented. Silas's face paled, recovered quickly. Those are private business matters. They're evidence of criminal fraud. Fletcher leaned forward. The territorial governor will be very interested in these records, as will the banking commission in Massachusetts. Silence. Just the clock ticking. Silas shifted tactics, looked at Martha directly, voice dropping to that intimate tone he'd used in their bedroom. Late at night, when he wanted something, when he needed her compliant. Martha, darling, you're not thinking clearly, and this man, nodding toward Caleb, has confused you. You need to come home. We can work through this. I forgive you for running away. No. The word came out flat. Final. Silas blinked. What? I said no. Stood. Her legs shook but held. The saddle sores burned, but she used the pain. Let it sharpen her focus. I'm not confused. I'm not your darling. And I'm not coming home. Martha, you're being hysterical. Sign the papers. She pointed to the documents on Fletcher's desk, her hand steady now. Release all claims to my inheritance. Agree to the legal separation. Sign them. Silas's mask cracked. His voice turned sharp. You can't do this. I have lawyers. I have connections. You have nothing. The words came easier now. I have proof, witnesses, legal documentation. You'll regret this. I don't think so. Sign the papers. Mr. Whitmore. Fletcher pushed the documents across his desk. Or I file criminal charges with the territorial court tomorrow morning. Wire the Massachusetts Banking Commission. Contact each of these women's families. He tapped the records. Make it very public. Silas didn't move. Your choice, Fletcher said. Walk out of here free, or walk out in irons. The clock ticked. 30 seconds. A minute. Silas reached for the pen. His hand trembled, barely visible. But Martha saw it. She'd learned to read his smallest movements over 3 years. This was defeat, and he knew it. He signed, quick. Angry strokes across 3 documents. Fletcher blotted each signature. Added his own as witness. Caleb signed as second witness. You're free to go, Mr. Whitmore. Silas stood, straightened his coat with sharp, precise movements. Looked at Martha one last time. His eyes held nothing now. No affection, no manipulation. Just cold assessment of a failed investment. A business loss to be written off. He walked out. The door closed behind him. Martha's knees gave out. She sat hard in the chair, stared at her hands. Fletcher gathered the signed documents. These will be filed with the territorial court this afternoon. Legally binding. He has no further claim on you or your inheritance. Thank you, Martha whispered. Thank yourself. You're the one who stood up to him. Caleb's hand touched the back of her chair. Not her shoulder, just near. Martha looked at the closed door, expected to feel something triumph, relief, anything. Felt only exhaustion, and a strange empty space in her chest where 3 years of fear used to live. What now? She asked. Now, Caleb said quietly. We go home. But Martha realized something as she stood, gathering her carpet bag. She'd lied to Ezra Brennan, used him, disappeared without explanation or apology. That debt remained unpaid, and she couldn't truly be free until she faced that too. The ride north took 2 hours. Caleb led the way, following a creek bed that cut through scrub grass and mesquite. Martha's saddle sores had scabbed over, but still pulled with each step. She'd ridden 3 days to Tucson, 3 days back, and now this. Her body had learned to carry pain without complaint. Ezra Brennan's ranch appeared over a low rise, smaller than Caleb's. Adobe house, barn, corral with maybe a dozen cattle, vegetable garden fenced with chicken wire. A woman knelt in the dirt, pulling weeds. She stood when they approached. Mexican, maybe 30, black hair in a long braid, calico dress, apron dusty at the knees. Her hand moved to shade her eyes. "Help you folks. Looking for Ezra Brennan." Caleb said, "He's in the barn." The woman's eyes moved to Martha, lingered. "I'll fetch him." She disappeared into the barn. Voices drifted out low, questioning. Then a man emerged, 50-ish, weathered face, hat pushed back on graying hair, walked with a slight limp. His eyes found Martha, widened. Then something like amusement crossed his face. "Well," he said. "The bride who wasn't—" Martha's throat closed. She dismounted, legs shaking, burst on herself to meet his eyes. "Mr. Brennan, I owe you an apology." Ezra studied her, looked at Caleb, still mounted, back to Martha. "You do, at that. But first—" He turned toward the barn. "Rebecca, come on out. You'll want to hear this." The woman emerged, wiping her hands on her apron, stood beside Ezra, close enough that their shoulders touched. "This is Rebecca Torres," Ezra said. His voice held something Martha couldn't quite place. Pride, maybe. "My fiancée, getting married next month?" Martha stared. "You met her 3 weeks after you didn't show up." Ezra's hand found Rebecca's. "Church social." She was helping Mrs. Oliveira set up tables, dropped a whole platter of tamales right at my feet. Rebecca smiled. "You stepped on half of them. Had to help her make more. Spent the whole afternoon in that kitchen." Ezra looked at Martha. Hadn't talked to a woman that easy in 10 years. Realized pretty quick I'd been asking the wrong questions in that advertisement. Martha's vision blurred. "I used you. I lied about my name, my intentions. I took your money and did me the biggest favor of my life." Ezra squeezed Rebecca's hand. "If you'd shown up, I'd have married you. Would have been decent about it. Maybe even happy enough." He paused. "But I wouldn't have this." Rebecca spoke for the first time. "Ezra told me what you were running from, about your husband the banker." Her eyes held Martha's. Steady, understanding. "That took courage coming here, facing what you did." "I'm sorry," Martha whispered. "I'm so sorry." "Don't be," his voice gentled. "You freed both of us. Me to find what I really needed. You to get away from a man who hurt you." He tilted his head. "You did get away, right? That's done. It's done." "Legal papers signed yesterday in Tucson. He has no claim on me anymore." Ezra nodded. Looked at Caleb. "This the rancher from Clear Creek." "Caleb Shaw," Caleb said, touching his hat brim. "Heard about you. Good reputation." Ezra's eyes moved between them. Saw something that made him smile slightly. "Seems things worked out for everyone." Martha's throat still felt too tight to speak properly, but she managed. "I wanted to tell you myself, not hide from it." "I appreciate that." Ezra gestured toward the house. "Rebecca makes good coffee. You two want to can I?" "Thank you, but we should head back before dark." Caleb said, "Fair enough." Ezra extended his hand to Martha. She shook it. His grip was firm, calloused, warm. You ever need anything, place to stay? Help with something, you let me know. Rebecca and I, we believe in helping folks who need it. Actually, Martha said slowly, an idea forming. There might be something. Ezra waited. Caleb and I were thinking about expanding his ranch, making space for women who need somewhere safe, women running from bad situations. She looked at Rebecca. Would need someone who understands, someone who could help them settle. Rebecca's eyes brightened. Midwife work, teaching, maybe. Yes, exactly that. I'm in. Rebecca looked at Ezra. We could help with funding, too. Got some savings. Ezra nodded. Count on us. They shook hands all around. Martha and Caleb mounted their horses, turned back toward the road. Thank you, Martha called, meaning more than words could carry. Ezra raised his hand, Rebecca beside him, smiling. The ride back started in silence, sun angling lower, shadows stretching long across the scrub. After a mile, Caleb spoke. You did good back there. I should have done it sooner. You did it when you were ready. That's what matters. They rode another mile. The land opened up before them, endless sky, red earth, mesquite dark against the horizon. What do you want more? Caleb asked, not looking at her. Eyes on the road. Martha thought about it. Really thought. I want to stay. Build something that matters. At Clear Creek. If you'll have me. Caleb reined in his horse. Martha stopped beside him. He turned in the saddle to face her. I could make it legal, he said. Marriage. I mean, if you want that. No poetry, no grand gestures, just Caleb's weathered face in the evening light, waiting for her answer. You're asking me to marry you? Yes. Why? Because I want you there, not as hired help or someone I'm protecting, as a partner, in everything. Martha looked at him. This quiet man who'd found her dying in the desert, who'd given her space to heal, who'd fought for her without asking anything in return, who'd gathered evidence for weeks before she even knew Silas was coming. Yes, she said. I'd want that. Caleb nodded once. Something shifted in his expression, not quite a smile, but close. All right, then. They rode home in companionable silence. 6 months later, Martha stood on the porch of the expanded ranch house, new bunkhouse built behind the main structure. 3 women inside, 1 widow with a child, 1 fleeing a violent brother, 1 young girl pregnant and abandoned. Rebecca Torres came twice a week, teaching them midwifery, cooking, how to manage accounts. Mrs. Kemp from the general store had donated fabric and supplies. Ezra sent money monthly. Fletcher helped with the legal paperwork to make it official Clear Creek Women's Sanctuary. Martha kept the books, managed the household, taught the women arithmetic, reading, how to defend themselves with words and documentation instead of running. The chickens still needed feeding every morning. She gathered eggs, scattered grain, checked for fox tracks. Simple work that grounded her. Caleb came around the side of the house, leading a mare heavy with foal. He nodded toward the bunkhouse. How are they settling? Better. Sarah's teaching the girl to sew. Margaret's helping with the garden. Good. He tied the mare to the corral rail. Mrs. Oliveira's sending 2 more next week. We'll make room. Evening settled over the land. They sat in rocking chairs on the porch. The ones Caleb had ordered from the Montgomery Ward catalog after the wedding. Simple ceremony. Fletcher officiating. Mrs. Kemp as witness. Chickens settled into their coop. Stars emerged one by one. The air cooled, carrying the scent of sage and dust. "You happy?" Caleb asked, his voice quiet, in the gathering dark. Martha thought about it. Really considered. 3 years ago, she'd jumped from a stagecoach into the desert, choosing possible death over certain captivity. 4 months ago, she'd faced Silas across an attorney's desk and reclaimed her own life. Last week, she'd taught a frightened young woman how to balance a ledger, how to see her own capability in numbers that added up correctly. "Yes," she said. First time she'd said it and meant it completely. Caleb's hand found hers in the space between the rocking chairs. Rough palm, scarred knuckles, steady grip. They sat together, watching the last light fade from the sky. Inside the bunkhouse, lamplight glowed warm. Voices drifted out, women talking, laughing, planning tomorrow. Some mornings, Martha still woke, reaching for the wedding ring that wasn't there anymore. The impulse faded when she saw Caleb's empty chair on the porch, heard him already up checking the stock. Some evenings, she still went rigid at unexpected sounds, but the fear no longer controlled her. "You found your way," Caleb said. Martha looked at their joined hands, at the land stretching out before them, at the house full of women rebuilding their lives one day at a time. "No," she said quietly. "We found ours. There's something unfinished about stories like Martha's. We want to believe that signing papers and building sanctuaries erases what came before. But it sits quieter than that. Some morning she probably still woke reaching for that wedding ring she'd dropped in the desert. Some evenings, Caleb likely saw her go still at unexpected sounds. The past doesn't disappear just because we've walked away from it. Many of us carry things we can't fully set down. We've loved people who hurt us. We've run from situations we should have faced sooner, or stayed in places we should have left years earlier. We've made choices we're not proud of, used people's kindness, told necessary lies, survived in ways that still make us flinch when we remember. And perhaps that's all right. Perhaps healing doesn't mean forgetting or being made whole again. Perhaps it just means finding people who let us be broken in peace, who hand us coffee in the dark, who teach us that home isn't a place where nothing hurts. It's a place where the hurting is allowed to rest. Thank you for staying with Martha's story, for listening all the way through.